Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, it's a late night meandering, I guess. Some people were interested in my service in the British Army and some of my adventures in that. I've got to say that if you're one of those guys who proudly calls himself a Marine or I don't know, a soldier of any kind, and you're proud of what you did and you have a love of the service, you probably should ring off or do what you have to do to get out of this video, because it probably won't appeal to you. Not everybody likes the army, not everybody likes the service. Now, when I went in, just to give you a recap very fast, because I don't want to say the same thing every time when I do a video about my army service, but I went in when I was 15 and a half. What they didn't actually make very much of, probably said it very quickly in one of those those kind of voices at the end of every ad that you get, where it tells you all the side effects. Well, one of the side effects of signing on for 6 years at the age of 15 and a half was that the first 2.5 years would not count. So I was actually signing on for 8.5 years. I don't think it could happen now, but that was back in the year 1900 and frozen to death, as I often say. So when I went in, I didn't actually realize that I wasn't going to like this. For about a year, I kept thinking that it was actually going to get better. And of course, it doesn't get better, it just gets worse. It gets worse with time. Time is not the great healer that people think, not in every case. When you're doing 8.5 years in a job that you really hate and really can't get out of, time is not your friend. So always when you are with people who really don't like being in the army, they have what's called a demob chart, and your demob chart tells to the day exactly how long you've got to serve. And all of these wonderful movies where they talk about these guys who selflessly, and I respect them for this, they selflessly sign on for another tour of duty at the risk of their lives. Well, I admire you. You are brave, courageous men, and sorry, but it didn't work for me. And now, 8.5 years, I never fired a rifle. I only fired the trombone. Okay, a lot of people may think that I should have stuck with firing a rifle, but that didn't come to me because I was a musician. And I very quickly realized that I was never going to enjoy being in the army. Now, at that time, I remember reading a book which the book had a great effect on me, but for the life of me I can only remember that the book was what the book was about. And it was about a man in the German army, and I think it was called the Private War of Private Smith or something like that. Anyway, this was a man that decided that he would take the army on and beat them at their game. Well, I quickly found out that I couldn't emulate that man, but what I did do was, and this may sound very strange to people who have never been imprisoned into a contract which they just can't get out of, which is making them terribly unhappy. Alright, maybe I'm a wimp, maybe I'm all kinds of things, but I responded in a way that made sense to me at the time. Now, I received some good education, and I put in my hard time for that education, okay? 8.5 years is a lot to pay for any education. So I did all of the qualifications which would take me and allow me to be a sergeant. I was a musician first class. To my knowledge, that would have allowed me to achieve a great rank. The only problem was I was in a life that I really hated. So to me, and this will only resonate with people who went into the army or any service, were struck daily by the stupidity that seems to reign in the service, the mindlessness. Well, of course it's mindlessness, because if you have people who are thinking for themselves, they're not going to make good soldiers, are they? Because they're not going to be, well, your basic training is actually to break any individual thought that you have. Now, fortunately, I never did any basic training. Because I was only 15, I didn't need to do that because I was just a boy soldier. So they sent me straight out to the band, which was, at the time, the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, and it was serving in, sorry, I'm swatting mosquitoes. It was serving in Berlin. So my 16th birthday, I was in Berlin. Not active service, even I am not that old. So I very quickly, once I settled in, and in my last couple of years when I really tried very hard to get out of the army, which is a whole other story which I need to tell, but I realized I'd have to respond in my own way. And I hated being in the army, and I thought, well, why should I be the only one that's unhappy about me being in the army? So my way was to make the army unhappy about having me. If they wouldn't let me go, then I wasn't going to adhere to the insanity of the rules that they have. Now, for instance, when you went to receive a new piece of uniform, when you went in, you would want things which were good fitting, so that you would have very minimal amount of tailoring, which was done free, of course. So you would go in and you'd say, for instance, can I have a pair of, please make them size 8 trousers, because they're much too big for me. The guy that's listening in the quartermaster store, he doesn't give a crap about whether you're interested in having trousers that fit. In fact, he probably hates the army as much as you do. So he says, "Oh, 8s? Nah, we haven't got any 8s. Have a pair of 10s." You can't protest. Well, I realised, well, wait a minute, what's the insanity here? I'm asking so that I can look good and make the army proud for me. Try that one on. And I'm asking for a pair of trousers that fit me properly. So I'm asking for a pair of, say, size 8s. And the guy would have some kind of glitch in his thinking. He would throw you a pair of size 10s, as if he deliberately was trying to make you look stupid. Well, I thought, well, this is a good thing for me. And I remember watching a movie called Sad Sack, which was Jerry Lewis. Well, Jerry Lewis was in his character in the movie, he was a super intelligent man who had gone into the army for some reason best known to himself, and he looked terrible in uniform. He was a sad sack. I thought, well, my hero. So when I went in for a new pair of trousers, I didn't ask for a size 8 so they would look good on me. I asked for a size, well, why don't you give me a size 10? And he'd say, certainly, here, have a size 12. And I would say, thank you. Well, what that meant was that this would be made for a man who was probably 6'7", and here I would be, little me, at 5'9", and so I'm supposed to try to make myself look good in this, in spite of every effort by the army to make me look terrible. So what I did was, I said, hey, give me a pair of size 10s, and and then I'd get the size 12s, and I'd take them into the tailor, and he would measure my inside leg. That's a bit of a thrill. He'd measure my inside leg and say, okay, well, come back tomorrow. And I would go back and I would get a pair of pants that were 4 sizes too big for me, and I would bunch them up. The leg would be the correct leg so that it didn't fold into a concertina shape at my ankle, but the crotch would be down somewhere near my knees. Thank you. And so it ended very well for me, because what I used to do was I did this with all of my sizes. I had a battle dress which was far too big for me and looked like a blouse and looked like it had been inflated, and I had a hat that was far too big. Well, in the army, when you wear a beret, you're actually not allowed to shrink it. Now listen to this and get the stupidity here. You're not allowed to shrink the pancake of a beret that they give you. So they give you this black beret and it's too big. And when you say, sir, this is too big for me, well, shrink it then. But if you shrink it and some idiot with a stripe comes along, he can charge you for defacing government property. If you shrink it too small. Well, I thought, well, if I've been given a pancake, why would I shrink it? And I used to wear it, gloriously unshrunk, and absolutely love it. And this all came to a climax for me, and I danced down the road when I heard it. I used to make sure, of course, that all of my ill-fitting uniforms were pressed, cleaned, and faultless. And then I'd put them on, and they'd look as if I'd been shrunk, because everything would be too big. And the sergeant for the band came round, and excuse my language on this, but he said, I don't understand. He said, all your gear, all your kit is perfectly clean, but he said, you just look like a sack of shit. Thank you, sir, I said. Of course I didn't say thank you. But when he was out of sight, I danced down the road. It wasn't making me look stupid. The army just hated having me around because I just looked like a mess. That's me. I did what I could to rebel because I could see the way that the army affects the thinking of the people that are there. That's why I said, if you're a proud Marine, you're not going to like this because I rebelled against the establishment that you may have loved. Now, I wasn't an active soldier, I was a musician, right? So I wasn't out there defending my buddy by watching his back and preventing him from being killed. I was out there playing music, and that was what I did. So if I wanted to have a uniform that was 3 or 4 sizes too big for me, I didn't harm anybody but, as far as I was concerned, the army. So there I am, the sack of, and quite proud of it. I know I'll get a lot of people that say, well, I served in the army and so did my father and my grandfather, and I was very proud of it. I respect your viewpoint. Perhaps you will respect the viewpoint of this sack of... Okay, foreigner in the Philippines, thanks for looking in. Bye for now.